I'm Fox 32 entertainment reporter Jake Hamilton. 50 years after the original film scarred a generation of moviegoers, The Exorcist is heading back to the big screen this weekend with a new sequel, The Exorcist Believer. The film is directed by filmmaker David Gordon Green, who directed the 3 most recent Halloween sequels. And just like he convinced Jamie Lee Curtis to return for those, he's a big part in bringing back the original stars of The Exorcist, Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair, back for this new sequel. He joined us on Fox 32 News to discuss their return and the legacy of that original terrifying masterpiece.
Angela, can you tell your dad how long you were gone?
A few hours.
Baby, you've been gone 3 days.
I want to start out with a big question, because honestly, Tubular Bells is, I think, some of the best use of music in any film in the history of cinemas. You have to decide when to drop that needle so that it has the biggest impact on us. I'm not going to reveal when or how you do it, but how did you decide when to use that needle drop and drop Tubular Bells?
It's so tempting. It's a very powerful, almost primal piece of music that Mike Oldfield created. And if you watch the original film, you see how sparsely it's actually used, but how it resonates. And so you take those lessons of when and where, and we experimented with a lot of places. And at first you put it in and you overuse it, then you pull it back and you underuse it, and then you find just the right delicate balance of when to use it for proper impact.
This is why you're a better director than I could ever be. I would just use it the whole movie. Just like, it's great, the whole movie. I want to discuss working, without spoilers, with the great Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair.
You have some experience with possession.
Yes, more than I'd like.
Having them around as consultants, being able to ask them as a movie fan all the questions you've just always wanted to know about their experience on the original film. So what is the coolest question you got to ask them about the original that most ended up playing a hand in your work here?
Well, for the most part, that's such a fun question. For the most part, I'm sworn to secrecy on all the good dirt. But I did learn a lot from them, about how different of a director I am than William Friedkin in our process, but how different the industry and the theatrics of being a director is 50 years ago. So I think that's a really fascinating thing to study just in my own profession, is making movies in 1973 is a very different arena than it is right now.
Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Damien Karras. And I'm the devil. Now kindly undo these straps.
I learned ways that I think through Ellen and Linda helping navigate, particularly with the youthful performers, how to safely go to dangerous places, how to get the effect of some of the horror, some of the terror, the expressions, and the emotion that these young actresses were going to go through.
I don't want to go to hell.
Good, play that trick on you.
But do it in an ethical way, supervised by teachers and child psychologists and parents. And we had teams of people working to engineer those performances, and then the incredible intuition that both of these actresses had.
Oh, that is fascinating. You mentioned the late, great William Friedkin, who I am just obsessed with as a film fan. So this next question is meant to be just a fun hypothetical. What is a moment from the first movie that you most wish you could have directed, just to have fun with it, or just know what it would have been like to be behind the camera for that moment?
Wow, that's a epic question. What would that be? I'll tell you, I have a weird. There's a scene in it that a lot of people think is disposable, but when the detective is entering Chris McNeil's house to interview her about Bert's death.
Might your daughter remember, perhaps, if Mr. Dennings was in her room that night?
No, she was heavily sedated.
It's serious.
There's a beautiful nuance that says so much about her character through that conversation that you could probably lift that scene out and nobody would know the difference. But it layers in so much subtlety in her performance that I would love to hear what the conversation between Friedkin and Burstyn was in that Detective Kinnaman scene. It's subtle. It's not the big set piece. In fact, it's the absolute opposite. It's the intimacy that I'm interested in, the connection between the people in front of the camera and those behind, and what that psychology is like is always fascinating.
Oh, Cool answer, dude. I love that. That is fantastic. Look, it goes without saying that Father Merrin arriving at the house and standing in the light, it's one of the most beautiful shots, not just in horror, but in all of cinema. And I felt like there was a moment, a shot, I'm not going to say what it is, in this film, there was a little bit of a tip of the cap to that shot without doing the same thing. So I'm wondering, just as a movie fan, what is it about that original shot that works so well? And am I wrong that the shot that I'm thinking of is meant to be an homage to the shot that in the original?
I love it because we didn't intentionally design that shot to be homage, but as we're lighting, we said, hold on, stop, don't move. There's something here. Tweak that, step here, we got it. Yeah. So it was that kind of a set where you can't walk onto set in the morning and say, we're gonna shoot this iconic shot from a movie. Nobody can plan that. But I think when the actor or actress steps to this specific mark and the lighting hits them just right, you find those moments that give you chills and you know you're doing your job well.
Hell yeah, love that. They're giving me the wrap really quick. I just need a yay or nay. A lot of controversy about whether or not the spider walk should have been in the final cut, the theatrical cut. Where do you stand on the spider walk down the stairs?
I say nay.
Nay!
Nay.
Oh, I love the spider walk. Hey, man, seriously, thank you for always taking the time. Thank you for fitting me in your schedule, man. Patrick always makes sure that I'm in, and I just want to say I appreciate you, man. Seriously, thank you so much.
Yeah, good talking to you as always.
All right, take care, man. Bye, guys.
We want to thank Director David Gordon Green for joining us on Fox 32 News. He is always a great guest. Unfortunately, I wish I had better things to tell you about his new Exorcist sequel. The Exorcist Believer actually starts out really strong with a first act that establishes that slow dread that made the original film so effective 50 years ago. For a moment there, I actually thought that they were onto something with this new reboot, but through no fault of her own, once Ellen Burstyn returns to the role of Chris McNeil, the film quickly descends into a misguided legacy sequel that just completely misunderstands what made the original film so effective and so terrifying half a century ago. The new ideas here are wasted, and the recycled ideas from the original are basically a soulless and pale imitation of the original film. The demon has no personality, there's no sense of fear or dread, and the shock factor, the scares, are honestly rather tame. We're supposed to be getting 2 more of these over the coming years. All I can say is the power of Christ better compel them to make a better movie than this one. I'm Jake Hamilton, Fox 32, Chicago.